These days, if you're a Mercedes fan, you'd be excused if you don't want to watch the races or follow the sport in general, because the team is arguably going through the toughest times in their history since the partnership with Petronas began in 2010. Their star driver is leaving. Realistically, Russell is a great driver, but simply hasn't had the great car. And the only slightly positive thing is that Verstappen might join, but with each passing day, that prospect is also looking bleak. To top it off, in Melbourne this weekend, the Silver Arrows almost publicly announced that they won't be competing, but rather experimenting a potential spot for further upgrades this season. Will this plan of theirs work, and how did it come to this? Hoping that its latest model, the W15, would propel it closer to Red Bull, Mercedes has been confronted with a harsh reality following its recent difficulties in Saudi Arabia, and these setbacks have served as a sobering reminder of the considerable work still required to even come close, not to Red Bull, but to Ferrari themselves. And despite aspirations, the team's performance in Jeddah fell short, with McLaren and Aston Martin finishing ahead. Mercedes have said that much of its struggle comes from a very confusing issue with the W15, as it fails to perform as expected in high-speed corners due to a combination of bouncing, loss of downforce and grip. This weakness appears to be the primary cause of its deficit against competitors, although the car demonstrates competitiveness elsewhere on the track. Toto Wolff acknowledged the team's struggle, noting that while they excel in other areas, they lose significant time in high-speed sections, and this is supported by GPS data comparisons from recent Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, revealing a notable slowdown in high-speed corners compared to the previous year's model, the W14. When comparing George Russell's data, who was the fastest Mercedes driver both last year and the previous one, it's evident that a year ago he could easily maintain full throttle through most of this section, whereas this time he had to significantly ease off the gas. This decrease in speed, costing him approximately 10 kilometers an hour, resulted in Russell losing about 0.130 seconds in this short sequence alone, and this deficit wasn't made up until past the halfway point of the lap after negotiating the bottom hairpin bend. However, from that point until the finish line, the Mercedes showed notable improvement compared to the previous year, finishing the lap more than half a second ahead, which indicates that performance in terms of top speed and medium-low speed corners has significantly improved. Recognizing the significant time loss in high-speed corners, Mercedes understands where its focus needs to be, but despite all this, at present the team lacks clear answers regarding the underlying issue. The discrepancy between the car's on-track performance and the simulations and simulated data at the factory further add to the confusion. The unpredictable loss of grip, which adversely affects driver confidence, has not been attributed to any obvious cause. Furthermore, the problem doesn't seem consistent throughout qualifying and the race, as situations of oversteer on low fuel are compounded by bouncing, whereas during the race it's more about inconsistent grip and downforce. As Mercedes trackside engineer director Andrew Chauvelin said, "There's more fuel on the car, you're going a bit slower," and that seemed to calm down and wasn't an issue. And then the big one is we don't really have enough grip there, so that's one of the things that we're working hard on this week, because Melbourne has similar nature of corners. Further adding to the complicated picture is the fact that the pace of the Mercedes compared to the opposition doesn't appear stable throughout a race weekend. The W15 appears able to hit the ground running on Fridays, when teams normally are pretty consistent in terms of fuel loads, but is not able to make gains as the track rubbers in. In fact, Russell thinks the Mercedes drops away as the weekend progresses, saying that it's not the other teams getting faster, but the Silver Arrows getting slower. In what was a disappointing 2023 season, Australia proved one of Mercedes' strongest races, with a 2-3 on the grid before Hamilton finished second to Max Verstappen as George Russell retired with engine failure. Returning to the Albert Park circuit, Wolff is keen for Mercedes to gather information at a circuit with a mix of high to medium speed corners that can be used to steer its development focus. We've been hard at work since Jeddah building on the learnings from the first two races, explained Wolff. It's encouraging to see the potential in the W15, but there are also clear areas of improvement. We have looked competitive in low and medium speed corners, but high speed has been a weakness so far. We've been working hard to understand why our performance hasn't reflected our expectations. Improving that is a major focus. We hope to make some initial progress for Melbourne, and that work will guide our development in the weeks ahead. It's great to feel the energy and determination running through the factories as we work to unlock the potential of the car. We left points on the table in both Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. We started off each weekend strongly, running our usual practice programs, but couldn't deliver on that initial promise. With the chasing pack being so close, maximising the potential of the car each weekend is key. Albert Park gives us another chance to show what we can do. Does all of this suggest that 2024 will be another year filled with troubleshooting and necessitate major changes that can only be implemented in the winter? While it doesn't look good, things can still go the right way. Mercedes implemented significant changes to the car's architecture for the 2024 season, including a revised monocoque with the cockpit shifted rearwards by 10 centimeters, along with adjustments to the rear suspension and gearbox. These alterations targeted key design elements to unlock greater performance potential. However, the main issue of Mercedes in 2024 likely lies in the intricacies of the floor, particularly the hidden floor's topography. Addressing this issue demands a profound understanding of aerodynamics, and from an external perspective, one can only speculate about potential solutions in broad terms. The resolution will likely hinge on meticulous attention to detail. If adjustments to the car's setup and operational procedures prove insufficient, Mercedes will likely scrutinise the underfloor's shape and the nuances of its edges to tackle the problem. Ultimately, if the issue primarily stems from aerodynamics, it is theoretically solvable, provided Mercedes can decipher it. Since returning from the initial two races of the season, Mercedes has devoted considerable resources to addressing its issues. However, we can only talk about how they will upgrade this and that until they prove it on the track, and this is exactly why the team is considering various experiments for the upcoming Melbourne weekend to assess progress. One such test could involve reverting to its Bahrain test spec floor, aiming to identify any unintended consequences of its Race 1 upgrade. The stretch from turn 7 to the turn 9-10 high-speed chicane at Albert Park, precisely within the problematic 250 km/h range, emphasises the weaknesses of the W15, and understanding the urgency to avoid further setbacks, Mercedes is looking for immediate solutions. But the fact of the matter is that the team completely failed this era of ground effects rules, and without the valuable feedback from Hamilton, they may well struggle this season as well. The fact that the Silver Arrows will even postpone their planned upgrades to experiment in a Grand Prix race, while teams like Red Bull, McLaren, Aston Martin and Ferrari have clearly defined upgrade plans that they will execute according to schedule, speaks volumes about the position the Silver Arrows are in, and only then will they determine whether their scheduled upgrades will deliver the desired improvements or if other issues need to be addressed first. The struggle faced by Mercedes in their third year with these regulations is undoubtedly embarrassing, especially for a driver like Lewis Hamilton, who expects to compete for championships. However, as Fernando Alonso noted, 19 drivers entered this season knowing they weren't title contenders, focusing instead on winning races. And for Lewis Hamilton, this season may be about maximising results before his move to Ferrari. The upcoming Grand Grand Prix in Melbourne maybe won't necessarily determine if Mercedes will be good or bad this season, but it will certainly show the way in which the team will be moving for the foreseeable future, and that in itself might play a big part in how this season turns out for them. Surely the engineers at Brackley have their hands full, but whether that will be enough to salvage this season is anyone's guess. What's yours? Do you think Mercedes will manage to dig themselves out of the hole, or will this be another very average season? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video very soon.